Hello, and welcome to today's workshop, Readers Advisory Ideas and Practice, presented by Booklist. My name is Susan McGuire, and I'm the Senior Editor for Collection Management and Library Outreach here at Booklist. We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Penguin Random House Library Marketing, for their generous support of this program. We will send out some additional resources and recommendations from our sponsor in tomorrow's follow-up materials, and we'll showcase some of those resources throughout the program. Before we begin with today's program, I'd like to go over some technical details. Links to all of today's slide presentations were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. We will send PDFs of all the slides, along with additional materials from our sponsor, to everyone tomorrow. If you have any trouble locating these materials, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Settings. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we encourage everyone to submit your questions in the Q&A box. Our panelists will be grabbing questions from this box throughout their presentation, and we will be sure to pass along all unanswered questions to our panelists after the webinar so they can follow up via email. The chat box will also remain open throughout the entire program, and we will send the chat messages along with our follow-up materials to everyone tomorrow. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We have an entire afternoon of workshops planned today, all designed to keep you up to speed on both the ideas and practice that will enhance your RA game. You can see today's schedule on the screen. Please note that you are welcome to attend any and all of these sessions and will receive a recording of every session tomorrow. So let's get started with our first workshop, Perspectives on the Past, Recommending Historical Nonfiction and Memoirs, presented by Stephanie Sendaula and Allie Stevens Gosselink. Stephanie is a New Jersey-based librarian with experience in outreach, reference, and readers advisory at both public and academic libraries. She is currently Branch Services Supervisor for Youth and Adult Services at Somerset County Library System of New Jersey. Allie is the director of Calhoun County Library, a very small rural library in southern Arkansas. Allie currently reviews YA books and graphic novels for Kirkus, Booklist, and SLJ, and is a member of the YALSA Board of Directors. Take it away, Stephanie and Allie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Hi,
Yes. Hi, Allie. Thank you again for co-partnering with me on this too. It's great to see you.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited to be doing this again.
I am too.
Does that look right to everybody?
Yes. Okay. Now we're up. Just making it full screen. Perfect.
All right, so we are going to talk today about understanding and recommending history nonfiction for Readers Advisory. We do have some specific title recommendations, but we're really going to talk about sort of larger groupings and subgenres and how to think about nonfiction in your collection.
Yes, and I'm just really excited for this topic specifically and the appeal factors. Just a heads up, I'm keeping my camera off just for the webinar today, just because we're dealing with some weather issues here. But first, appeal factors. I love talking about this. There are so many fun appeal factors for nonfiction, especially for adults. And I love the comment about having a history degree. Yeah, there's really a great tie-in to, like, I have a history degree as well. And so kind of, you just feel like that immediate connection. So speaking of, you can develop connection to historical events, gain a broader understanding of the world at large, getting lost in a story, time, or place. Reading a book in one sitting is also for nonfiction, not just for fiction, as I remind everyone as well. And then last but not least for now, reevaluating and reassessing your existing beliefs. So plenty of appeal factors for adults, and Allie will talk about some for teens as well.
So let's face it, teens are constantly being bombarded with attempts to grab their attention. And the best teen nonfiction marries excitement and high interest topics with the right balance of clear information and entertaining anecdotes and visuals. Well-researched nonfiction with sources and evidence can expose teens to the format of trustworthy information so that they can recognize it when they encounter it in real life. Nonfiction appeals to teens for real-world excitement and adventure. They're often high interest topics. There are a lot of cultural connections that we may or may not see as much of in fiction. Clear writing styles plus graphics and illustration can make nonfiction more accessible for some teen readers. And these books really help with building information literacy across all formats.
Yeah, the information literacy is such a key part, even for adults too. That's a huge part of just visual literacy, maps, charts, etc. So super important. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, so moving to the next slide.
Yeah, this is it.
Okay, I think my thing has a little lag. Is this the history and memoir appeal factors?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Sorry, my computer has a little lag. I'm sorry, everyone.
No, it's
So
fine.
yeah, thanks for bearing with me. So one of my favorite parts of these appeal factors is there are a huge range of styles from popular to academic. So I like to say whatever mood of nonfiction you're in, fun, silly, serious, there is something for you. You can find a book to meet your interest. There's compelling stories that spark further interest. So, you're reading to get a little info, introduction on a topic. You can always find a deep dive. I love a good deep dive into something else. One of my favorite appeal factors, I cannot overstress this, cinematic, often made into films and TV shows. How many times do we get a book at the library and we see that little sticker on the cover? I love those stickers where it says like now a streaming show on Apple Plus or Netflix or Hulu. So these books are very cinematic, and that is a huge draw for me specifically and for many patrons as well. And then the extras cannot be overstated. Photographs, maps, charts, some on timelines, further reading, biblio for deep dives. Even like, I love it when they have a little family tree for memoirs where you can see all these connections. So it's always just so fun. You can do a huge deep dive on your own too. So
I love family tree.
Yes.
Memoirs, specifically those written by historical figures, can connect abstract time periods to the voice of a real person for teens. Like Anne Frank drawing us all into her hidden apartment, historical memoirs can personalize important time periods and events. It can expose teen readers to new ways of thinking. These are often really engaging topics and personalities, and it can help readers develop a personal sense of their place in history.
I love those. And those are great factors for adults as well. So I feel like it definitely ties together. Okay, in popular history, fascinating time periods. This is not comprehensive. There are plenty of more fascinating time periods. This is just based on what I hear from patrons, what people are often looking for. Military history, as many of you know, if you work in reference collection development at a reference desk like I do, it's a huge topic. Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II. I even see like interest in Vietnam War lately, Iraq War, Afghan War. So military history is huge among really all ages, memoirs, histories, completely always popular, evergreen. So British monarchy, British history, I would say it's like a Tudor era, Elizabethan era, Victorian era, also like popular monarchy. The crown is still like of interest, so any modern monarchy books, like there's always someone who will put it on hold that we've known. Just like those books are always of interest for sure. Princess Diana had, I think there was, I'm like dating myself. It was like the 20th anniversary of her death, like a couple years ago. And that was a huge like draw of people just like, learning more about her life. And so again, always of interest. Yes, 250th anniversary of the US this year. So again, Rev 250, huge tie-in that you can do this year as well. I would say ancient Greek and Roman history too. So I'd say like Mary Beard, the SPQR book. There's like other like just Dan Jones. So it's kind of like that's more like Tudor history. But that's also kind of interest. And we have a lot of people who are just really gravitating toward those time periods. And last but not least, for adults, civil rights, 1960s, I would even say even to the 70s. I'm seeing a lot of 70s histories lately. Again, always popular 20th century history. I agree the women sparked interest in Vietnam War history. Completely agree. So yeah, I would say 60s and 70s even is a huge topic of interest lately. Lots of readers specifically reading books in those decades. I've even seen a lot of memoirs specifically focused on a memoir of the 70s, a memoir of the 60s. So yeah, Allie, what do you think? I'm curious about for teens too.
I just want to say that, the British monarchy is more dramatic than most fiction sometimes
Yes.
for
Yes, it is.
fiction reading.
Yes. As someone who does love reading these monarchy books, so dramatic.
Yeah. So for teens, I think the popular time periods shifts a little bit. I am going to say this very gently, but the 1990s were 30 years ago.
I don't want to think about it, Allie.
I know. Today's 15-year-olds were born a full decade after 9/11. So 9/11 is very historic for them. And so when you're thinking about time periods that are of interest throughout history for teenagers, you can shift that time period up a little bit. I know it's so rude. I'm sorry. I was hurting my own feelings trying to put this together. Any military events that teens have family members that might have been involved in are going to be highly interesting to them. So the Iraq War, 9/11, even Vietnam. There's a really strong pipeline from Percy Jackson to Greek and Roman mythology. And you can just about bet that the kids who read all the Percy Jackson are going to come back and say, hey, what do you have on Greek mythology? That happens to us all the time. So that is a hugely fascinating time period for them. I think the continual echoes of the fight for civil rights in this country and around the world keep these stories relevant and timely always. And then the pop culture of the 80s and 90s is completely fascinating, and much more of a historical thing for teenagers than, for us.
Yeah, completely agree. Teens now especially love the 80s and 90s. For them, it is historical. We do a lot of 90s themes events here at the library, and they're always popular.
Yep, the style has definitely come back around.
Yes, it really has. Yeah. And speaking of civil rights books in America, so the first two are adult books. Again, not comprehensive. These are just some that just really stand out and I thought were great. And they still have a lot of interest. So The Color of Law, which is fantastic, just about segregation and how kind of maps and why we live the way we live, zip codes, which sounds like really like wonky, but it is a really great read. And then some of us, I'm glad some people in the comments are loving it too. Yeah, that book is just so fascinating and really, I think a lot of crossover with YA as well. So I definitely always recommend that one.
The second two here are YA titles. Stamped by Jason Reynolds is the adaptation of Dr. Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning, which was a doorstopper of an adult nonfiction book. Stamped, the YA version, I find is extremely accessible even for adult readers, and it's in Jason Reynolds' warm, inviting, so recognizable voice. And so it makes sort of difficult and painful topics a little easier to swallow because Jason Reynolds is right there with you. The Stonewall Riots is by an author who's not featured on my auto-buy authors list, but should have been. That is Gail Pittman. And Stonewall Riots Coming Out in the Streets traces what was going on in that time period across the country for LGBTQ rights.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry for the typing. I was just commenting in a chat. Teens here love 80s and 90s. So I will stop typing in a chat. So I'm sorry about that.
That Stonewall Riots book, Beth, it is a great book for all teens. Yeah, that one is actually written for the YA level.
Yep, definitely agree. And so for popular history, noteworthy subgenres, again, we mentioned some of these earlier, but military history, again, always popular. Women's history. Now, someone mentioned the women in a chat earlier. And there's been like The Residents, which has been super popular now, a Netflix TV show here. So yeah, British history, as we mentioned, historical crime is super popular, as we know. Science histories, and then micro histories. I love those. Those are so fun. I'm glad there's love for those in the chat as well. So, and again, not comprehensive. These are just some that I just see people gravitating towards fairly often.
Stephanie, can you give us a little definition of microhistories? Because this was actually a new term for me that I learned about while we were working on this presentation.
Oh, sure. So I definitely think of those almost in a vein of like Mary Roach, like with like Fuzz, and like she has those little micro histories on different topics. I know like Mark Kurlansky does those. So they're just like really like more like accessible. A lot of science histories about a topic, but it can be almost like memoirish too. So I would say Mark Kurlansky and Mary Roach are kind of really specialized in these. Same with Susan Orlean. So you're not doing like a deep historical dive. It isn't a deep history book. It's just more you can kind of read it like little bites and nuggets at your own pace. And then it's kind of just like a little sample. I like to call a sprinkling or sample into a topic. Yes, B. Wilson is great for like those kitchen micro histories, which are really fun of my own personal interest.
I think the suggestion of everything is tuberculosis is a great one.
Yes,
We kind of weave
definitely.
one individual story with this broader historical context, and that's kind of what I learned of microhistory was. All right, popular subgenres for teens. Military history, of course, both actual battles and individual maybe groups of warriors or events that happen. There is a broad array of different things under that military history category. Cults and crime are perennially popular topics. Justice and civil rights are always a hit. Natural disasters tend to, I think, be very high interest, very high impact stories. And then you can also see a lot of an individual tale woven together with the larger historical context or environmental context of what was happening in this natural disaster. Science is full of stories of individuals and discoveries and diseases that, I have notes about this, that really are fascinating for teenagers in particular. There's a lot of gruesome, gory stuff in there. And then microhistories, again, for teens. So we are going to highlight science history and microhistory for both adults and teens. Stephanie is going to talk about 2 adult science history books first.
Yes, definitely. So also catching up in the chat, the I Survive series is so popular among my teens as well. So I was really love the conversation going on here. But for science history, so mentioned Mary Roach earlier. Her latest is Replaceable You. I always love her book covers too. But yeah, and hers are kind of a little micro history series as well. But yeah, these are always just so fun. I kind of recommend these as science for non-science people. That's kind of how I recommend it for myself as well, as someone who likes science, but I don't want to do anything too sciencey. So I think her books are great for that. And then Paradise. So I really love the cinematic type of science books that are kind of just read in one sitting, get lost in a book. And this is now a series on Apple Plus, or movie on Apple Plus. And then, so I think that's just, a really nice read for, science for non-scientists is how I like to describe it too. So yes. And Allie, I love your picks too.
I had so much trouble choosing which titles to include here.
Same.
Yes, all day long. My background is in science too, so this is really like my favorite little niche. Science nonfiction for teens, I find, often follows that microhistory format where it takes a single person, disease, or discovery and extrapolates it into the context of its time, highlighting implications on scientific progress or social justice or some other thing within the scientific realm. Let's see, I changed my titles at the last minute on these 2. So Discovering Life's Story is by Joy Hakeem. This is actually volume 2 in a planned 3-volume series. It's multimedia heavy. It's got lots of photographs and graphics and drawings. And it covers, this piece of the story covers the 18th century from the work of Carl Linnaeus all the way through Darwin and Wallace. So it's tracing really that initial burst of evolutionary thinking through that time period. And then the Codebreaker, which is Walter Isaacson, who's a very famous adult biographer, adapted this one with Sarah Duran. And this is a reworking of an adult title about a scientist named Jennifer Doudna and the CRISPR revolution. And so this is these are the scientific advances that brought us mRNA vaccines and genetic editing. So this is a really fascinating look into how that all came about.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. Yeah, I was looking at the chat too. And yeah, I agree. Simon Winchester is also a great option for science. I said Bill Bryson too. So there's lots of good science authors out there.
So much.
Yeah.
All right, microhistories.
Okay, and our next. Yes. So yeah, we talked about a little bit about those earlier, and there's so many good ones out there. I know people mentioned Mark Kurlansky, who has Salt and Cod. We mentioned Mary Roach. We mentioned B. Wilson, but what some of my favorite recent ones, Katie Go has Foreign Fruit, A History of the Orange, which is kind of a blend of microhistory and memoir. Very fun, very whimsical, and I kind of like these, how they're really whimsical too. So that's a really great one. Again, science for non-sciencey people who want to read nonfiction don't know where to get started. That's a great one. And then Slither, I know this cover, you're like snakes, but it is a little fun, a little whimsical. So yeah, and I love with little like creative micro history. So this is a really fun one. That's kind of, yeah, again, blends science, blends memoir, talking about snakes. And then anything creepy crawly. Again, like horror is really popular right now. So this is kind of like not too scary, but it is a little of the, yeah. I'm looking at all the comments too. Yeah. Just very those like the whimsical creepiness that we like.
There's something deeply creative about these authors who can take this scientific or military topic or giant cultural context and then like weave in these little anecdotes into some sort of cohesive whole. I just always find these books so fascinatingly crafted. The two YA options that I've chosen here, American Spirits, explores whether the famous Fox sisters could actually speak to the dead or whether that was just a sophisticated scam. And this is happening at a time when 1 in 4, I think, sons had not come home from the war. And so there was a real desire among a lot of people to be able to speak to dead loved ones. And so, the situation here is sort of, are they playing on that broader need in society? Symphony for the City of the Dead traces, it's about the Battle of the Siege of Leningrad. And there was a orchestra piece written during that battle. And this piece of music went on to mean a whole lot to the people who lived through this. And M.T. Anderson does a really great job of exploring how music can tap into human connections that maybe words don't always get to. So these are fascinating choices for me. I love both of these books. Memoirs.
Yes, memoirs. Okay, I am so excited. I know many of you who know me who in the chat, I love a good memoir. My favorite nonfiction subgenre. I love reading about other people's lives. And again, not comprehensive list of subgenres here because there are so many memoir subgenres. These are some that I absolutely love and ones that I see patrons asking for all the time. So celebrity memoir, we just have to list it up front. I love a celebrity memoir. I'm not going to lie. I like reading about what they're doing, any gossip. Is it true or not? I just want to be entertained. So love a good celebrity memoir. There's always some coming out pretty much all around the year. I think Allie would agree with that too. So there's, so always a good celebrity memoir. Medical memoirs are huge right now. And honestly, I'm really, really digging them. So yeah, there's a lot of really good ones across the board from a wide variety of authors. And then, I know it's not everyone's thing, but if you like The Pit, if you're watching that, I think this would be a really good fit. Grief memoirs, again, not everyone's thing, but there are some really, really good ones. And it is like a huge subgenre. We have people coming in specifically for this topic of, how do I navigate this time in my life? And there's a lot of really, really good grief memoirs that are being written right now. Travel memoirs, again, I love a good adventure travel. I want to escape with someone while they're out around the world. So travel memoirs are so, so fun. I agree, medical memoirs touch a lot of people. Chef memoirs, this is one I'm just now getting into, which is wild because you would think I would discover these earlier, but there's so many. But yeah, give me all the kitchen drama. I want, like, as Allie was saying earlier, nonfiction, there's more drama than fiction. And we know restaurants have a lot of drama. So these books are wild. Some of them are almost too wild for me. But yeah, I'm really getting into the chef memoirs lately, and they're really fun. Some of them are almost a little too much fun, but they're really fun. And then spiritual quests, pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Like, you're going on a journey, you're discovering yourself. And I really love these, especially when they're kind of like of a certain age too. It's kind of like a midlife. I really love those. Very moving, very touching. Yeah, and there's so many other subgenres. So if you have a favorite subgenre for memoirs, please put it in a chat. I'd love to hear about what you're reading. Because again, I love a good memoir. There's so many to choose from. And then, yeah, so fun. So
Okay, I have one comment and then there's a question in the chat that I want to
yes.
Somebody said realistic horror fiction is really popular at my library. Can't believe
Yes.
it. Think about throwing nonfiction, true crime, and micro histories at them. And I would say absolutely medical,
Yes.
science nonfiction, true crime. There's lots of micro histories. I think there is a lot in the nonfiction world that taps into that like discomfort and unsettling sensation that we're getting out of a realistic horror fiction.
Mhm.
So it kind of expands the collection a lot for those readers if you can help them find nonfiction titles that give that same thing that they're looking for.
Yes, completely agree.
Okay, and then somebody asked if we have a good distinction between memoir and autobiography. She said I have a good feel for the distinction, but sometimes fail when I'm describing the difference to teens. And I would say that I could be completely wrong. So Stephanie, tell me what you think. But I think a memoir is more topical. An autobiography sets out to say, I was born here, I grew up here, I lived through this, and now I am here. And a
Yep, that's exactly it.
memoir is more about like a specific experience and how that has affected them since.
Yeah, completely agree. And like, some people like Mary Carr write multiple memoirs. So you can write a memoir about different periods of your life. Or an autobiography, I feel like it's more comprehensive, like from when you were born until your life now. So yeah. So that's a great answer, Allie. So thank you.
I hope that clears that up a little bit. It's still kind of murky, and I think there are a lot of things that kind of waver back and forth on that line.
Yep.
Okay, memoir subgenres for teens. Movie stars, musicians, and visual artists are often excellent storytellers. Of course, pro athletes from football, baseball, and basketball are popular, but so are stories of Olympians, gymnasts, dancers, athletes who overcame disabilities, and more. I think sports is perhaps a broader category than we tend to think of it. Cultural heroes like Indigenous leaders, civil rights giants, educators, lawyers, and other change makers have really rich stories to tell. Spies and war heroes tend to share tales of survival despite narrow odds. These stories are often full of luck and cunning, and they're hugely suspenseful and action-packed. Scientists and smart women, particularly through history, have interesting tales to tell about the fights that they have gone through to get their discoveries recognized or to succeed in their field despite the odds. And I think graphic memoirs are a particularly good vehicle for memoirs for teens. And we're going to talk about those in a little more detail in a minute, I think. Yes, biographies and memoirs for adults first.
Yeah, so we're highlighting some biographies and memoirs for adults, some that people have actually already mentioned in the chat. So these are just ones that were from the past couple years or so that I find are still generating interest, still really popular. We probably all know Crying in H Mart, hugely popular from a couple years ago, and there's still a lot of interest in it as well. One of the most popular memoirs we've had, I think definitely in the past decade or so. When It All Burns came out last year, seeing a lot of buzz for this one. It was nominated for a lot of awards. A memoir about firefighting, and there's a lot of really good, as many people mentioned, nature memoirs that relate to climate change. And yeah, they're just really, really good. And this is one of my favorite ones. Also great on audio if you're an audiobook listener. Salito, someone mentioned earlier, Fantastic book. One of my favorites of the past couple years. Just really a standout. Won lots of awards, as you can see, the little awards on the book itself. Memorial Drive, which is just a wonderful memoir. I love women's memoirs, and this is just a really great one of just, inner women's lives. It's just really fascinating to me. And I loved this one too. This is more bio, the last one. Daughters of the Bamboo Grove. I kind of just maybe spans bio memoir. I actually also really like adoption memoirs. That should have been one of my subgenres earlier. But adoption memoirs, adoption bios are huge right now. This one was so fascinating. After I read this, it's long. I read it in one sitting. So that's how much I liked it. It probably would have been great in audio too, but again, really fascinating. And one of the ones from last year that I'm still reading, just a really great look into adoption as an industry itself and the people involved. So.
Teen memoirs are often written by authors or other artists. And these stories all tend to be focused on some sort of trauma, specifically in the teen years or very early life, and they have a hopeful outcome. Their journeys of moving forward through struggle and through adversity to find personal growth and success, and at a minimum stability on the other side of those difficult situations. I'm not going to go into detail about all of these because I think we are going to push up against our time, but Apples Against the Core is an Indigenous story. Ballerina of Auschwitz is a World War II story. Beautiful Struggle is a young Black American boy. Hole in My Life is about, a kid who makes a mistake and then has to spend his entire life atoning for it. And Ordinary Hazards is poet Nikki Grimes' memoir. And so these are all written, well, all of them except for Ballerina of Auschwitz are written by otherwise popular YA authors who, kind of go back and tell the story of how they got to be where they are. And I think it's really interesting that so many of the impactful memoirs for teens are written by authors themselves. It says something about people who go on to write books for teens, maybe. All right. Graphic memoirs. I love this category so much.
Yes, I'm so thrilled for this too. So starting out with some for adults, again, not comprehensive. So if you have favorites, put them in a chat. Some of the ones that I've really enjoyed and the ones that I still hear patrons asking about. So Ducks from Kate Beaton that came out a few years ago. Really loved this memoir of a woman working in male-dominated fields. Really just fantastic. I really just love the sparse imagery, sparse writing. It just really, really stood out to me. So still love that one. Ginseng Roots from Craig Thompson, author of Blankets, which is one of my favorite graphic memoirs, probably of all time. So, and this is his latest, came out last year, I think. Kind of just another memoir from him focused on a specific period of his life. A really great, fascinating memoir that's just, has a lot of interest. And ones we probably all know, Good Talk by Mira Jacob came out a few years ago. Love a nice graphic memoir and conversation. A really fun one, and a lot of crossover as well with like YA. And then last but not least, Roz Chast. This is just one I really love. Speaking of like kind of almost like grief memoirs earlier, this isn't specifically grief, but I love the title. Can we talk about something a little bit more pleasant? This is just a really great memoir of caregiving, which that's also a memoir subgenre I should have mentioned earlier, that I think is just kind of many of us can relate to. And it was just a really phenomenal book. But yeah, this is, again, not comprehensive. There's plenty more I could have chosen. But yeah, limited for space.
Okay, when they send us the chat, y'all make sure that you go back and look because this list of books that just exploded in the chat.
Yes, I'm seeing so many good recommendations.
Amazing. Yes, Fun Home is one of my favorite books of all.
Yes.
Jess said, something that's been driving me nuts is wanting to see more biographies for teens about Olympians. So many were teens when they reached that success, and you can find a ton for young children and some for adults. I absolutely agree. I have no idea where these books are or why that's not a really popular thing to publish because
agree.
Like so many Olympians are teenagers when they More Olympian memoirs publishers, if you're listening.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that graphic memoirs for teens are perhaps the most perfect vehicle for these stories. They convey a sense of place and they kind of evoke an atmosphere around what is happening in the story. They create space for readers to sit in spaces like war-torn Bosnia in the 1990s and The Cat I Never Named, where a stray cat helps this girl find enough hope to keep moving through a war zone. Japanese American concentration camps come to life. That They Called Us Enemy by George Takei, which was set in 1942. And then sometimes we have more personalized experiences, like in Halfway There. This is a story of a biracial Japanese American girl who travels for a trip abroad to Tokyo, and she has to kind of reckon with the two different halves of her own identity and the difference between the physical locations attached to those identities. And the graphic format really brings home, the differences between Tokyo and the United States. In Spinning by Tilly Walden, she uses this almost monochromatic color palette to sort of illustrate how monotonous this practice of ice skating has become for her, as she's realizing that it is not the thing that she wants to continue doing with her life. And so I think graphic memoirs kind of create even more space for the emotional impact of a memoir so that readers can kind of actually go through that sliding glass door and sit inside what it felt like for the author to be in that situation. Auto-buy authors.
Yes, auto-buy. So I'm looking at the chat. I love the Who to F books as well that everyone was commenting on. So I wanted to also shout those out. But yeah, auto-buy authors, again, not comprehensive. So if you have any favorites, please put them in a chat. These are just some that I feel like we've already mentioned some of these authors too. These are just auto-buy authors for me. So obviously, starting strong here, Isabel Wilkerson, The Warmth of Other Suns, one of the most phenomenal books that we've had in recent memory. She had another recent book coming out, Cast. Then I think she's working another book coming out as well. So definitely auto-buy. Oh, someone's asking, is it a genre? Not specifically a genre, but if these authors have a book coming out, I will buy it because patrons will be asking for this author. So that's kind of how I think of auto-buy, of like, there's always interest in these books. Killers of the Flower Moon, someone mentioned it works for teens as well. Definitively, David Grann has several books that kind of span history, true crime. He wrote The Wager a couple years ago, so he's definitely an auto-buy author. Killers of the Flower Moon still has interest, still popular. So yeah, he is definitely auto-buy for me. Agree, Mary Roach. I agree. Someone mentioned definitely auto-buy. Agree with Patrick Radden Keefe. He has a new book coming out next month. Already placed an order because, again, auto buy. Again, not limited to these four, but if you had any favorites, please put them in a chat. We mentioned earlier Robin Wall Kimmerer, the Service Berry. She also wrote Braden Sweetgrass. Again, auto buy definitively. Her books are great and always have interest. Last but not least, Eric Larson has written several books spanning history and true crime. They're always popular. They're always really fun. These are also great books for people who don't know where to start with, nonfiction. So definitely an auto buy for me. I think this is his latest book, Demon of Unrest, but he has several going back to the last decade or so. If you have any favorites, again, put them in a chat. I love this chat so far. It is phenomenal. So
yes, this chat is doing a lot of work over here for helping me expand my
yes,
my knowledge.
Yes.
All right. I could have made an entire session just of auto-buy nonfiction YA authors. Once I started digging into what books have come out, I realized that there really is a fairly small contingency of authors who are putting out some incredible stuff. So this is, again, absolutely not comprehensive in any way. And there are some other authors that are auto buys for me who have titles in this presentation but aren't on this slide. So I would say any author that has had a book featured, at least in the YA parts of this presentation, is someone to keep an eye on, like Gail Pittman and M.T. Anderson. Neither of them is on this list, but those are also auto buys for me. So Auto-buy authors for teens, other than Steve Shankin, who is an auto-buy, and that kind of goes without saying. This first title on this slide is cheating a little bit because it has two editors, but Mark Aronson and Susan Campbell Bartoletti do incredible work in the sphere of historical nonfiction for teens. This one in particular calls out the year of 1968 in a multimedia format, and it shows all the different things that were going on around the country in that particular year, which was a very formative year for the country. Don Brown does fairly short, very accessible nonfiction about natural disasters and harrowing journeys like immigration and I said natural disasters. This one's about Hurricane Katrina, and he has one about wildfires. Then Candace Fleming. Candace Fleming won several awards this year at the Youth Media Awards, and her broad spectrum of topics covers everything from the family Romanov to her latest, which is a story of Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre. Death in the Jungle traces the life and death of cult leader Jim Jones through the eyes of his many, many victims. Stories of large-scale manipulation, human monstrosity, and violence like this are particularly magnetic and captivating, and I think Candace Fleming does an incredible job of outlining the entire picture of what's going on and giving you very intimate insights into the feelings of what was happening with the people that were experiencing it. And then Sarah Miller, always has unusual subjects in a really fascinating way. So she did a Lizzie Borden book, and then this one explores the life of a journalist and her relationship with Eleanor Roosevelt. Drowned City is a graphic novel. Yes, Don Brown's books are graphic.
Great. Thanks, Allie.
Yes.
Yes. I was just catching up on the chat. I loved all the love for Devil in a White City by Eric Larson, which is one of my favorites. It got me into nonfiction.
Yeah, definitely. That book got me back into reading at a time when I was kind of in a slump. I love that one. And yes, Rex Ogle. Oh my goodness, I love Rex Ogle so much.
Yes. Okay, so we're finishing up. So I'm a huge fan of, it's not nonfiction related, but Bridgerton and Hated Rivalry. If you've watched both of them, they both feature cottages. So what books are we bringing to the cottage? So Allie and I have some picks for you. I love the cottage love in a chat as well. So one of my favorites, I'm listening to this in audio right now, is Unabridged History of the Dictionary, which at first you're like, really? But it is really fascinating. Again, there's lots of drama behind a dictionary. Who would have thought? Like, I had no idea, but I'm really invested. It is a great audiobook.
I don't know. Merriam-Webster's pretty dramatic online sometimes.
Yes, they really are. They are so sassy. It is wild.
I love them.
Yes. Yeah, they are political entities. But yeah, there's a lot of drama. This is a great read. My Mother's Daughter, which I also have on my shelf right now too, but other people like it in the chat. Again, I love a good women's memoir. This is one that I'm loving this season. It's just phenomenal. And then, yeah, really can't put it down. So I got into birding at the beginning of the pandemic, like many of us did, and I'm kind of slowly reading through nature books and birding books. And yeah, there's a lot of drama here too, by the way. I had no idea. So this is fascinating if you're into birding or just like a good nature book. Plenty of drama here. It is really great. Then When Trees Testify, great on audio and in print. I'm really loving this one. I love a good nature science book. So that's what I'm bringing to the cottage. Allie, what about you?
All right. I love a good nature book too. I just read Entangled Life about fungi and cannot stop thinking about it. All right. So I am bringing to the cottage Angry Girls Will Get Us Through, which just came out in February of this year. And it traces the catalytic power of women's rage through American history and into the future. Honor is based on a true story of resilience, moral courage, and the hidden histories that we inherit. This is about a girl who discovers some letters hidden in her house that connect her to a historic event. And it's all true, but it's also kind of an unbelievable story. Stealing St. Nick is M.T. Anderson's next book. It comes out a little later this year, and he is using the myth of Nicholas of Myra, who would become what we know as St. Nick or even Santa Claus, to explore myth making as a human experience. And then Until We Meet Again is a graphic memoir of Lily's father's immigration from China. And I have not read the second two yet, Stealing St. Nick and Until We Meet Again, but they are at the top of my list. As soon as I can get my hands on them, I will be reading them. Yes, Angry Girls is a YA edition. It's a compilation of essays, and it was reworked from an adult version for a teen audience. All right, that is all we have for you guys today, and we would love to have your questions, your suggestions.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for listening to us. Yeah. Any questions? I'm trying to catch up with the chat again. So many great suggestions of what you're reading, what you're loving. Any specific questions for us, you're welcome to put them in a Q&A. I'm trying to answer as we go along.
All right. Grace says there are a couple questions in the Q&A. Let me see if I can find that. Aha.
Yeah, I see that Kirsten asked if we consider popular history and narrative nonfiction to be the same. So I use those words interchangeably. That's just kind of my background from publishing, where to me, I use popular history and narrative nonfiction interchangeably. I know some people don't, but I usually do. So, I mean, when I think popular nonfiction, I think of like Erik Larson, Mary Roach. That's just to me, that's popular, it's narrative. So some people have specific differences, but I think they're pretty much very, very similar. So I use them interchangeably.
Jane asked about good nonfiction RA resources and sites. And this is definitely something that I would be interested to talk about and see what other people have to suggest. I know there's the Rise Feminist Book Project, which usually has some good nonfiction for young people. Stephanie, what are your suggestions for keeping on top of nonfiction releases?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all across the board. So I really love Shelf Awareness, which is one of the newsletters that comes out daily. It's kind of a lot of book news, but they also have like nonfiction news too. I know PW Daily has kind of a good roundup of like what's popular, what's coming out. It's fiction and nonfiction, so you have to look through, but that's also really helpful. I know Lit Hub from Grove Atlantic has a good newsletter. Again, I get so many email newsletters, and I admit I don't read them every single day, but they are really, really helpful. Yeah, someone mentioned, yeah, Lit Hub is wonderful. It is a really comprehensive. They also have a section called Bookmarks, which has reviews of nonfiction books. So when I'm stressed on time, I just look at that section of all the reviews of books, and I'm like, okay, where is this reviewed? Done, done, done. That's great. Book Riot is really great. And then I think that's pretty much covers that I use pretty much daily is like the Shelf Awareness, PW Daily, Lit Hub, and Book Riot. So those are my kind of go-tos.
They had a list of 50 microhistories that I came across when I was researching for this presentation, and every single one of those 50 books sounded like something I would read. So
that's amazing.
Crime Reads is also great for mystery and thriller and true crime nonfiction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that there are some publishers who work in this sphere specifically who are worth
yes,
keeping an eye on.
Agreed. Yeah. And then I see a question from Christine about picking nonfiction for book clubs. I have just a suggestion. So my favorites for book clubs, memoirs, huge book club topic. People have a lot of opinions on memoirs, which already makes it great for discussion. Also, you might not think this, but cookbooks or cooking from a book, that's popular among all ages. So that's also really fun. So I would also try that if you're just looking for a program idea of like, you know, let's like cook from the book, or let's like look at this book and like see what recipes stand out. So that could be good for passive programming too, like copying, so you can play around with it. Feel free to email me if you want more detail, because I have some great program ideas for that.
Kevin said they run a music nonfiction book club. Do you mean like music, memoirs, and biographies, or books about bands? How do you, anything?
That's fun.
That's
yeah, I love that too.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. Thank you, Carrie, for putting that list in the chat of the RA resources. That was very helpful.
Yeah, it was Shelf Awareness, Book Riot, PW Daily, then Lit Hub was the other daily.
Yeah.
So Lit Hub / bookmarks.
All right. Taylor said that it is time for us to start wrapping up.
Yes, well, thank you guys all for being here again. Please feel free to reach out, email us if you have any questions. We're happy to chat.
Thanks. Bye, y'all. Have a good
Bye,
afternoon.
everyone.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Allie. Thank you to everyone who's rocking the chat. That was really insightful. And to all of our attendees here today, we need your help. Tell us which tools are most useful to you and your staff doing real-time RA interactions with adult patrons. We want to know what you use when a patron approaches you at the desk or in the stack, or calls the library or sends in a chat request. Use the QR code or a tiny URL on the screen, or click on the link that will be sent in the follow-up materials tomorrow. Our next workshop, Enchanting Escapes, will begin in a few minutes. While you wait, please enjoy these resources and recommendations from our sponsor, Penguin Random House Library Marketing.